Thank you, Chair and members. Always happy to be invited and to be part of the dialogue at this committee. The Canadian automotive business is anchored in assembly. Some commentators this week, including the Business Council of Canada, said we can survive the current tariff war with the Americans because there'll always be a market for automotive parts. And we can give up our fight if need be on automotive assembly. I represent those suppliers, over 200 companies that manufacture 95% of the independent parts production in Canada. And I'll say that we completely disagree with that assessment. 50% of the parts that are made in Canadian factories go into Canadian vehicle assembly. And as we see the bad news over the last couple of weeks, where we have a discontinuation of production plans in both Brampton and Ingersoll, and in my opinion, probably a precursor to permanent closures there. As those assembly opportunities in Canada leave, so does the strength of the foundation for the Canadian auto parts sector. The parts sector has never asked for handouts, and there's a lot of dialogue in and around the automotive discussion to say, these are companies that always need to be supported by the Canadian government, and we're very disappointed frequently. The auto parts suppliers have always said, anchor assembly opportunities here, and we'll work out selling to our customers. In asking government to focus on assembly, we're also employing 100,000 Canadians to make parts, cars, and parts of cars, tools for cars, and systems that go into those cars. Those are Canadian entities or foreign entities, Canadian investments for those Canadian assemblies. Stellantis is a 100-year partner in Canadian automotive. Of course, started as Chrysler and Dodge and Daimler Chrysler and Fiat Chrysler, and now Stellantis. The best path forward for that 100-year partnership is to get another product in Brampton to also partner with that product in Windsor. We heavily supported, as the APMA, the EV investment in Brampton, in Windsor, and the R&D facility in Windsor, but we always said it has to include an absolute guarantee of assembly in Brampton. And we heard in the last session the angst with which the industry has faced this EV mandate. We've been very clear, front and center on realism, on setting the pace of EV adoption in Canada. Most of you have seen me quoted widely as saying we were never going to make the 100% in 2035, but we should find the pace that worked for those companies that co-invested with us and maybe stretch those a little bit, but also to be realistic. The White House has taken aim at the sector. It's stripped incentives for American buyers and production subsidies for the companies that are in the space, and also hitting us with illegal and unprecedented tariffs, hoping, in the president's word, to end production of vehicles in Canada. I've spent 20 years in this space advocating for investment in Canadian automotive and in Ontario. I personally worked with Fiat pursuing investment in Canada in 2006 and 2007, then worked directly on the restructuring of Daimler Chrysler in the financial crisis of 2009 and 2010. The pursuit of new programs together with their great Canadian leader, Sergio Marchionne, from 2015 to 2020. And then we supported, again, the Nexstar Battery, Windsor Assembly Plant, Brampton Assembly investments in 2022 and 23. I don't get paid by OEMs. They're not our customers. I only work in the interests of the Canadian suppliers. Most of the time, our interests align with the OEMs. I'm not shy to say that when it works. And in those investments, those hard-fought investments over the last 3 years, I spent a lot of time advocating for the math in those investments and in those plants for suppliers and the 100,000 workers that we employ in those supplier firms. But I'm also not shy to say when it isn't true. The companies, Stellantis, and of course, General Motors, have choices that they made that favored the U.S. They're all big boys and girls. There are consequences to those decisions, and they need to defend them, both here at committee and in the public sphere, and to their workers. They can put product in those plants. They should put products in those plants. They're obligated to put products in those plants. The Canadian taxpayer base, including the companies that I represent that pay those taxes, that help to make those investments true, need those investments to be whole. And the people who show up at work every day and go home every day past television cameras, who didn't sign up to be politicians, but simply hardworking auto workers who have mouths to feed and bills to pay, have obligations that need to be met here. We're all invested over 100 years in a partnership that should be more reliable than 9 months of angst from the White House. And finally, personally on Brampton, I bought a 2005 Chrysler 300C, a 2006 Chrysler 300 SRT8, a 2010 Charger SRT8, a 2018 Challenger Demon, and a 2022 Challenger Demon 170. I drive the product, I buy the product that I said the best suppliers in the world and the best workers in the world put together. And so not just in my role as the president of the APMA, but as a consumer, I'd like those companies to keep up their end of the bargain or face the consequences.
Thank you very much, Mr. Volpe. Ms. Payne, the floor is yours for upwards of 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, Chairman Carr and members of the committee. I really appreciate this invitation, and I also appreciate that you let Flavio go before me because I needed a little bit of time for my blood pressure to come down after your previous testimony. As you all know, my name is Lana Payne, and I'm the National President of Unifor, Canada's largest private sector union. We represent 320,000 workers in 25-plus sectors of the economy, including 40,000 in the auto sector, and we are Canada's auto union. As you know, this past week has delivered devastating news to tens of thousands of workers, both in Canadian assembly plants and across the supply chain. All of this, of course, is tied to Donald Trump's trade war. I'd like you to consider this. In the past 15 days, our union has received news that Quebec's PACCAR plant would reduce production at its St. Therese facility, just as new heavy truck tariffs are set to hit November 1st. This brings the total number of layoffs at that plant this year to 775. General Motors would end its Bright Drop electric delivery van program, leaving 1,100 workers indefinitely out of work, and as of today, there is no announced replacement vehicle program for Ingersoll, although we as a union are very committed to working with the company on a new product and future for that plant. Stellantis, as you all know, would move its promised and committed Jeep Compass vehicle program, which also includes the platform for that program, from Brampton to the United States, putting the future of this 3,000-worker facility at risk. This, of course, is in addition to the planned elimination of GM Oshawa's third shift scheduled for January, and as well numerous auto parts plant closures that we are also currently dealing with as a union. Let's not forget that what's happening in the auto sector is also happening in steel mills, in pulp, paper, and sawmills, in aluminum fabrication plants, and across furniture makers. Critical value-added industries in Canada, all suffering losses. It's brutal out there right now for working people. And I need this committee to understand this. Our industrial economy is in a major crisis, and we must do everything in our power to save it. Our entire trade strategy right now must be in defense of it and the more than 2 million Canadians whose lives and jobs depend on it. Now, in the time I have left, I want to talk about Brampton. I want to talk about Stellantis, the reason you've asked me to appear here today. In 2023, our union negotiated a commitment with that company, clear as day and black and white, the Jeep Compass program was coming to Brampton. In fact, 3,000 Unifor members ratified a collective agreement on that promise of the program coming to Brampton. And when ratifying that agreement, they knew that they would be out of work for a considerable period of time during the retool. I understand that very few of us could have foreseen in 2023 the disaster of a second Trump presidency and the weaponization of tariffs. I get it. This is all hard for everybody right now. But I'm going to be clear about something. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because commitments were made to workers, to our union, to this government, and to the people of Canada. And a deal is a deal. I want to say for the record that our union was blindsided by this decision. For 8 months, since the Brampton plant retool was paused, our union sought assurances. We demanded answers from the company because our members deserved answers. If a plan needed to change, then we could discuss it. We could problem solve. We could find ways to make it work, because we always do. All we ever received from Stellantis during that period was false reassurances. We were told in no uncertain terms that Stellantis was committed to Brampton and committed to the program, told over and over again. We were told this right to the very end, when apparently Stellantis at that time was no longer committed. You have to understand that to our members, this is a betrayal of the highest magnitude. To our membership, their collective agreement has now been violated and broken. 3,000 workers, 3,000 families, an entire community strung along for 8 long months. That plant has been retooling, and those workers have been without work since January of 2024. Stellantis says now that they want to move quickly, to get the Compass built and into showrooms. Yet by moving the program to the United States, it will only delay its production until at least 2027, whereas Brampton is almost ready to build right now. And that's why we are calling on the company to resume its retool immediately. This is the worst of corporate behavior, and it cannot be tolerated. There can be no situation where a corporation decides to cut production in this country, ship our jobs to the United States, and expect a free ride back in Canada. This cannot happen. I want to take a moment to thank Industry Minister Jolie and her team. The quick and decisive actions that they took last week, holding Stellantis to account for their actions and demanding a resolution in Brampton, was outstanding. Similar action was taken, as you know, with General Motors. I also want to thank our Finance Minister and his team for the notice that they sent the companies to reduce their tariff remission quotas. It was, in our opinion, the exact right move that was needed. We don't need corporate excuses. We need plans. We need products. We need commitments to be upheld. And everyone needs to learn that there are consequences to broken promises and broken commitments. As far as our union is concerned, that Jeep Compass program must stay right here in Brampton, where it was committed. We will be working toward that end, I can guarantee you that. And today, at this very moment, in Brampton, and tomorrow too, our members are outside that plant, standing up for their jobs, for their futures, and for their community, just as they are in Ingersoll. This is the fight of our lives, and we need our political leaders to be there with us each and every step of the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Payne.